I'm someone who can easily sink 40 plus hours into an RPG, but I can just as easily burn out from doing that too much. When this happens, I often end up wanting a short game that I can beat in one day to scratch that itch. Maybe this desire stems from spending way too much time playing short, tightly focused Flash games when I was younger. Carrying on that spirit, we have indie game devs giving us short games that are more polished than those from the heyday of Flash games. If you're like me and need a short but sweet game every once in a while, give these 5 indie games a try. What the Golf might have the largest amount of creative mechanics in any game. The way it iterates on the already fun normal golf mechanics are genius, and just when you think What the Golf couldn't surprise you anymore, you play a stage so creative that it feels like that one level could have been the mechanics for an entire game. The mechanics for some levels get pretty complex and challenging eventually. However, the gameplay is so snappy and responsive it rarely feels frustrating. It also has a lot of leeway for error at first, which is great to ease you into the challenge gradually. You'll control everything with only the mouse if you're playing on PC, and it's so natural to control that I feel like I would even recommend this to someone who barely ever plays games. Another reason I'd recommend What the Golf is that it's absolutely hilarious. Most of the gimmicks for the levels are pretty funny in themselves, but then you also get a golf pun at the end of each level and other funny writing throughout. The acapella soundtrack also helps set this goofy tone. But even though it's a little silly sounding sometimes, it's actually still a really solid soundtrack and super unique if nothing else. Something else that's pretty unique to a game like this is the explorable overworld, as it lets you have a decent amount of freedom in what levels you want to do, which helps the pacing. Although at around 3.5 hours and with so much diversity in the gameplay, this game never feels stale. Dozens of levels will go by in a flash as you just want to see what weird idea could possibly be next. Now here's another game that controls only with the mouse, but instead of 100 different gimmick mechanics like What the Golf, Donut County instead refines the one core mechanic of dropping things down a hole to perfection. The gameplay here is super fun and intuitive. The more stuff you suck up, the bigger your hole gets. It's very similar to Katamari in that regard, but I think this game gets a little more creative with its idea than Katamari does, as Donut County has a more puzzle-slanted focus. What's great here is that the solutions to the puzzles are never too obtuse, making it never feel frustrating. However, it still has enough cleverness to be really satisfying when you solve a puzzle. Part of why these puzzles go so smoothly and intuitively is that the physics are really well done. This makes the simple core concept super gratifying, and it's so satisfying every time you tilt a long object into your hole. That sounded weird. Although the core concept seems simple, Donut County gets very creative with it. For example, adding moving objects to the levels adds a whole nother layer to the gameplay, and adding a function to shoot objects back out of the hole to hit switches or interact with different things adds the depth needed to carry you to the end. I won't spoil too much more, as a big part of the fun here is seeing what clever ideas in gameplay will be next. Transitioning from gameplay, let's talk about the transitions. No, really, this game will blow you away with its camera movement that guides you in story moments and gameplay. Although this is just one element of how Donut County nails it on presentation. The character and world designs are excellent, with the large amount of colorful characters being reminiscent of Animal Crossing, even having that cute text-to-speech voice, while the world has a Steven Universe kind of vibe with bright and beautiful pastel landscapes, and... wait a second. Another aspect that reminds me of great modern cartoons like Steven Universe is the incredibly funny and modern writing. I laughed so many times during this game's cutscenes, and not only were they funny, they also told an interesting little story about two friends that was really charming. The cutscenes don't have too much movement, but they do have really funny sudden posing changes that make the well-written jokes even funnier. A big part of what elevates these cutscenes and the game as a whole is the insanely good music by Daniel Kushner. This soundtrack is very cohesive while still having an incredible amount of variety to fit the large amount of settings and moods. I don't think there's a single track on here that isn't a highlight. Honestly, what element in this entire 2-hour game isn't a highlight? To me, it's a perfect game. The tight focus on one gameplay mechanic, the incredible art direction, plus the hilarious and well-presented story leads to a flawless experience from beginning to end. Another game with simple but refined mechanics, as well as incredible presentation and music that you should check out, is A Short Hike. This beautiful game lives up to its name in that it'll only take you an hour to beat the main quest of reaching Hawk Peak Summit if that's all you want to focus on. Although I recommend you take your time here, as the beauty of this game really opens up when you start exploring and soaring around the island with only the chill tunes to guide you. There isn't too much of a story, so there's no real rush to complete the narrative. The only story here is that you're on a trip and you need to get cell phone reception to make a call, so eventually you want to get to Hawk Peak Summit where you'll have reception. But trust me, don't rush things. Take your time and talk to everyone you stumble across. It's really fun to do so because the writing is so natural and funny. Also, make sure to talk to most people twice because this game has some really funny follow-up jokes when you do. As you chat with people here and soak in the Animal Crossing vibes, you'll inevitably be jumping and flying around the hills and valleys of this beautiful island. The platforming mechanics of a short hike are simple, but they're really tight and responsive. As you jump and climb your way around, you'll be finding collectibles, solving platforming challenges, and finding items like a fishing rod and a shovel. And this game really wears its Animal Crossing inspiration on its sleeve. When you've explored for a while and you feel like you're done chilling and you want to get going on the main quest, you'll start to search for golden feathers. These golden feathers give you additional jumps in the air. Each feather feels like a really nice boost in progression as the game is paced perfectly with how fast you'll be picking these up. When you get more feathers, the challenges will start to get a little more complex as you climb to reach the Hawk Peak Summit. The game is never too difficult, but reaching the summit is definitely satisfying as you get to soak in the beautiful art and music as you soar back down, giving you time to reflect on the nice experience you just had. Now if you're tired of chilling and you want to cause some havoc, Untitled Goose Game is perfect for you. This game became a huge meme at the time of its release because of the unique, hilarious gameplay. There's really no other game quite like it as you spend the whole game being a menace and just messing with people in different funny ways. You're asked to do certain things on a to-do list and these tasks usually play out as little environmental puzzles. Some are more obvious to complete than others, and the hints get more obscure as the game goes on, but most of them have some sort of funny payoff. The humor is really sold by the animations being so goofy. Flopping around stuff in your goose speak is always funny, and running around with your bouncy goose butt as some goober chases you around always makes me laugh. As you're running around, you'll notice how cohesive the aesthetic here is. The entirety of Untitled Goose Game nails its presentation of visuals and sound. On the visual end, the graphics are crisp and stylized in a really relaxing and pleasing way. This is down to even the small touches such as the UI elements. From the pen and paper to-do list, to the road sign pause menu, to the typewriter options menu. All these are just aesthetically pleasing and fit the game so well. The music fits these visuals perfectly too, as the chill, jazzy piano soundtrack sputters in and out reacting to your gameplay. The music perfectly encaptures the chill yet chaotic vibe of the game and is never intrusive. The only thing you might get stuck up on is that the controls are a little stiff and awkward. It's a little forgivable because it can cause some of the funny moments, but this definitely knocked the game down a point for me, because I'm supposed to be frustrating the people in the game, not myself. Though the gameplay isn't perfect, the puzzles in this 3 to 4 hour game are still clever and funny. That, combined with the perfect sound and visuals, makes for a really fun playthrough, especially if you have someone on your couch to laugh with. Untitled Goose Game was funny in its gameplay, but I don't think I've ever laughed more at a game's script than Barkley Shut Up and Jam Gaiden. This cult classic RPG Maker game is the oldest on this list, coming out in 2008, but it has stood the test of time because not a single game comes close to its weird atmosphere and jokes. This game takes place in a post-apocalyptic cyberpunk version of a crazy person's Space Jam headcanon, and somehow it works really well. The game is a perfect blend of being absolutely insane and taking itself seriously sometimes, which only makes the insane parts even funnier. But it's not just a funny game, it also is really fun to play too. I first played this in a time when I thought I didn't care about RPGs at all, and the last one I had played was Pokemon when I was a kid. This game turned my view on RPGs around though, because the gameplay is a really refreshing take on the turn-based formula, with a lot of action commands and super unique characters and enemies. I was much more impatient when I first played this too, so this RPG being 4.5 hours instead of the normal 25 plus hours of many RPGs is a big part of what appealed to me back then. Thanks to this short length, the gameplay and story are paced really well. You won't leave feeling like you needed more, and if for some reason you do, then you can replay the game in steampunk mode. This is a great playthrough for RPG fans who want to play a great game but don't want to spend dozens of hours on it, and for non-RPG fans, you'll want to stick around just to see more of the hilarious writing. This game's also free, so there's no real reason not to pick it up and give it a try. So there you go, 5 great short indie games that you can beat on a rainy day. I've had a lot of fun playing these, so please let me know your favorite shorter games in the comments, as I'm always looking for more. I wanted to give a quick shout out to another free RPG Maker game from back in the day called Melon Journey, made by the development team called Froach Club. I found out about this game because one of the two people who made it, Mini Pete, is an artist I'm a fan of, and so I was super intrigued when I found out they made games. Melon Journey calls itself an RPG, but it plays more similar to an adventure game because the gameplay is just talking to people and finding the right items. Though this gameplay is rather simple, the appeal of Melon Journey is in its funny writing, cute retro Game Boy style visuals, and the lo-fi charming music. This game is pretty fun, but the real reason I wanted to feature it is because of the sequel, Melon Journey 2. It's coming out sometime soon and it looks super promising. It's clear Froach Club is putting a ton of work into developing this game, as it's a huge upgrade to visuals, music, and gameplay. Show some love to Mini Pete and Marguerite Jane at Froach Club, and if this game looks cool to you, let them know you're hyped for Melon Journey 2.